Hello, friends. In this episode, I have a personal story about falling off the vegan wagon with a pepperoni pizza, and I'm wrapping up my reading of Henry Stephen Salt's collection of essays titled A Plea for Vegetarianism, with the last essay in the book, Chapter 10, Vegetarianism and Social Reform. I admit that the title Social Reform sounds a bit dry and boring, but so have the titles of several of his other chapters with words like diet, philosophy, fallacies, medical men. But by now we know that this heartfelt plea from Salt will strike firmly with satire, compassion, and strength. As we close out this book, before I get to my embarrassing personal story, let's have a refresher on Henry Stephen Salt. I've gotten to know him in A Plea for Vegetarianism. It is bittersweet to be ending, so this time I read the bio with reverence. Henry Stephen Salt, 1851 to 1939, was a British writer, social reformer, and ethical vegetarianism pioneer. Born in Naini Tal, British India, he was educated at Eton College and the University of Cambridge. Initially a schoolmaster at Eton, Salt left teaching in 1884 to focus on social and literary causes. A fervent advocate for animal rights, Salt co-founded the Humanitarian League in 1891, promoting kindness to animals and opposing blood sports. His book, Animal Rights, 1892, is considered a foundational text in the modern animal rights movement. Salt was also a vegetarian and vocal critic of vivisection, what we now call animal testing, colonial exploitation, and class inequalities. A prolific writer, Salt authored biographies of notable figures such as Percy Bysshe Shelley, Henry David Thoreau, and Thomas Paine, emphasizing their progressive and humanitarian ideals. His works influenced figures like Mahatma Gandhi and George Bernard Shaw. Henry Salt spent his later years in Sussex, living modestly and continuing his advocacy. He left behind a legacy as a compassionate reformer who championed justice for both humans and animals. The introduction of the book we've been reading, A Plea for Vegetarianism, has this quote by Henry David Thoreau. I have no doubt that it is a part of the destiny of the human race in its gradual improvement to leave off eating animals as surely as the savage tribes have left off eating each other when they came in contact with the more civilized. I included this quote in a short post-credits scene at the end of my soon-to-be-released book, Mano Mutante. Mano Mutante is book 6 in my Pedro the Water Dog Saves the Planet series, and during writing it, I had assembled a lot of food and vegetarian quotes from history. The film-like post-credit scenes were a fun way to include them in the afterword of the book. Henry David Thoreau is sitting around a hotel pool with whaling warrior Captain Paul Watson, Henry Salt, Leonardo da Vinci, Camus, one of my protagonists, and Lancelot, one of Shakespeare's characters. There's also a scene of George Bernard Shaw, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Michael Pollan pondering vegetarianism at the Spam Museum. Yes, that exists. Unhappy face. Such an intense focus lately on animal rights makes this personal story of falling off the vegan wagon that much harder to tell, but it's important to be honest if we want to be able to continue to share a message. So the pepperoni pizza story. My lovely partner was visiting at the end of a fun week, including spring camping in the rain. We stopped in a natural food store with a wonderful pizza place inside, an easy meal for tired campers. I had already decided to ask for vegan cheese or no cheese on a pizza I'd ordered a few months before. Standing at the register, I found the pizza that looked familiar called Greek Girl. I ordered the pizza as take and bake and never made a request for a different cheese. I was already on the slippery slope back to animal food. When the tiny $20 pizza was handed over, it was too small, so we ordered a second. I guess we could call this luxury pizza. I put dinner together, heating the pizza and making a vegan Caesar salad. We sat down to watch another excellent episode of the Whodunit, The Residents, and after a bite, I turned to my partner and asked, "Is this pepperoni?" He's not vegan. He said, "I was wondering that." I had options. I could hand him my pizza, or I could pull off the pepperoni. I looked back at the murder mystery and ate the pizza. Gulp. I'm in recovery from alcohol, and my clean and sober date is March 1st, 2022. I had to reset my vegan date to April 28th, 2025. I'm sharing this because isn't it fascinating that after such high resolve, I wouldn't have made a different choice? I could say many things to you like I was exhausted and starving, not unlike the Donner Party. I didn't want to make my partner uncomfortable. He was likely much more uncomfortable that my values were so paper thin. Reasons like it's already paid for, cooked, and on my plate. Isn't that why most of us are still eating meat? Because the industrial meat warehouse has already put the metal rod in the cow's skull, hung it up to drain the blood, and packaged it up with labels like tri-tip and sirloin? Yes, yes, and yes. The feta cheese made me think about the scene in Earthlings with the calves being torn from their mothers and thinking of the short lifespans of dairy cows. The slivers of bright orange cured cow flesh brought back 1,000 comforting memories of pepperoni pizza over my lifetime as it sucked a little piece of my soul's spirit. Maudlin, pathetic, hypocritical. Well, there I am thinking of myself again. I'm worried about what you will think of me instead of the animal that was killed for that pepperoni. The other day, I heard comedian Neil Brennan get offered a piece of apple pie on the Pie podcast with Katie Segal, and he said, "I'm vegan except for dessert." Not trying to throw Mr. Brennan into the guilt pot with me, but how long will I say I'm vegan except for? Fill in the blank. Last night, I accidentally bought pork longaniza instead of soy chorizo. They were next to each other on the grocery store fridge shelf. I was making burritos, had sliced open the packet, and then saw the label. I painfully threw the package in the garbage and successfully made a delicious burrito with blackened Peruvian beans, rice, cumin, cilantro, fresh guacamole, onion, tapatio salsa, and spicy kimchi. I wish my money hadn't gone to the pork. I'll be more careful. When will we have peace on the planet? I'm pretty sure the answer is the same. When we have societal rules to keep us from killing our fellow beings. When we don't say, "I love you" to our sons and daughters, and then say, "Let me kill this pig to make your breakfast." Here's the next chapter in A Plea for Vegetarianism by Henry Stephen Salt. Chapter 10, Vegetarianism and Social Reform. There are many signs that what has very properly been called the great food question will soon be recognized as a subject of immediate and paramount importance. The surface of party politics may be agitated by the fortunes of this or that legislative proposal, but the question which will chiefly occupy the minds of thoughtful men is how a sufficient food supply is to be provided for the increasing millions of the nation, and how we are to meet the social crisis which seems to be impending at no distant date, owing to the terrible destitution of the lower classes. Many are the suggestions constantly being put forward for the solution of this great national problem, but most of them are sadly inadequate and insufficient. Emigration is the favorite remedy of a certain class of economists and politicians, but apart from the objections to the injustice of this scheme, which would enforce an unwelcome exile on large masses of Englishmen, there seems to be no certainty that it would really improve the situation of those in England. The Malthusians again would have us believe that things can never come right until a limit is put to the numbers of families. But though this doctrine finds favor with high economic writers, it is one which the good feeling of the nation naturally and intuitively rejects. So urgent is the need of some remedial scheme that certain writers have even detected the future salvation of England in what is known as the freezing process, by which the carcasses of sheep are preserved in the antipodes and brought to our shores in floating mortuaries constructed for that purpose. In the absence of more practical plans of relief than those I have mentioned, it is not to be wondered that the supporters of thorough social reform boldly assert that nothing short of direct legislative action can materially benefit the condition of our English poor. What have we vegetarians to say on this subject, and what part can we claim to play in the solution of this great question? In my opinion, it is important that we should ponder our position thoughtfully and be careful to claim what is really our due, neither too much nor too little. It is admitted on all hands that a fleshless diet affects an enormous economic saving, and it is not seriously denied that such a diet is perfectly practicable for those who choose to try it. What then will be the value of vegetarianism at a time when the nation is racking its brains to find methods of feeding its millions who at present, from some reason or another, are woefully short of food? In the first place, I think we should do wisely in not claiming too much. The unhappy condition of the lower classes is brought about by many complex causes, which can scarcely be remedied by a single reform. The evil lies in the inequality of the laws which regulate the distribution of wealth rather than in any actual dearth of means of subsistence. It may therefore be fairly questioned whether, to gain a final and permanent relief, it would not be necessary to go beyond individual food thrift and to place the whole system of the production of wealth on a really equitable basis. Asterisk. It is often asserted by socialists that the adoption of a thrifty diet could not in itself improve the condition of the poor to any large extent. Individuals, they say, may at present save largely by the economy of vegetable diet, but when once the possibility of such a diet began to be recognized, wages would fall in proportion, and the whole advantage of the thrift would go to the capital class. This is very strongly urged by Mr. George in Progress and Poverty, Book 6, Chapter 1, and the obvious inference is that some external legislative change has, in the present state of affairs, become an absolute necessity. But while making this admission, all food reformers must protest against the very slight importance attributed by Mr. George to habits of thrift and frugality in living. However true it may be that such self-reform is of itself useless in the face of constant pressure of poverty caused by insufficient wages, it is nevertheless deplorably unwise to undervalue and decry the importance of habits without which no community can ever live in true happiness and content. On the other hand, we must not fail to claim for our system the immense importance to which it is justly entitled. Though vegetarianism may not be the only reform that is needed, it is nonetheless true that no other reform without it can be really and permanently successful. A nation that does not appreciate the value of food thrift can never be really prosperous. The unjust influence of the wealthy classes may be curtailed by legislation, but the life of the people will never be happy unless they have learned to practice frugality and simplicity of diet. Great, too, is the indirect influence of vegetarian principles in the carrying out of any plan of social reform. A pure and enlightened system of diet almost of necessity disposes the minds of those who practice it to general habits of simplicity and unselfishness. Those who have realized the value of moderation and economy in matters of food and drink are not likely to look with a favorable eye on vast accumulations of private wealth contrasted with an appalling destitution among other classes of their fellow countrymen. The vegetarian who recognizes in the earth and the common mother, whose kindly fruits are scattered in abundance before us all, can scarcely desire to see the land, the source of all life and all wealth, otherwise than the property of the nation that dwells upon it. One not unfrequently hears food thrift decried by ardent social reformers for the reasons I have indicated above. More careful consideration would have enabled them to see that no true reforms can be really incompatible or antagonistic. The well-being of a nation, which is the aim and object of the schemes of all wise reformers, cannot be affected by the single operation of any one remedy, but will be the outcome of the harmonious working of all. Each reform contributes in its own sphere to the realization of the whole, and in its own way is absolutely indispensable. There are many such movements at present going on among us. but none is more valuable and necessary than the reform of diet. That concludes Chapter 10, the final chapter of Henry Salt's A Plea for Vegetarianism. If you'd like to learn more about the rationale for vegetarianism from a modern hero, I recommend Earthling Ed's book, How to Argue with a Meat Eater, even if, or especially if, you yourself are the meat eater. Several years ago, I started my journey with meatless Mondays. A year later, I went to meatless 6 days, then finally no meat, but not without slip-ups, as this podcast shared. If you're still on the fence, I honor your journey, and even if you start with 1 or more days a week without meat, you will have a profound effect on the earth and your fellow beings. Thank you for joining me for the Peace is Here podcast. Until next time, sit with yourself in silence every day. That's self with a capital S. We are all scholars of peace. Peace and love to you all. Podcast music is Dalai Lama Riding a Bike by Javier Peque Rodriguez. A link to his music on Spotify and Bandcamp is in the show notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, it really helps me if you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Avis Kalfsbeek, and I write the Pedro the Water Dog Saves the Planet book series, which are a series of environmental adventure novellas. Books 1 through 5 are available at all your favorite online bookstores or at aviskalfsbeek.com. Book 6, Manu Mutante, is coming out soon. Go to aviskalfsbeek.com to be notified when new books come out. Thank you again. Listen for the peace.